In today's video, we're going to design a campaign based off of solo leveling. So the question is, what is solo leveling? Well, it is an anime based off of a South Korean manhwa, which is a Korean manga. And if you enjoy anime and have not watched this series, then we recommend that you go and check it out. However, as a word of caution, there's a number of violent scenes, especially in the early seasons, that may not be appropriate for younger audiences. Okay, what is the premise? So the premise is that there are gates and portals opening up throughout the world, and that certain individuals have the abilities to enter these portals and defeat the creatures that are within them before they come out and spill into the world and cause chaos and havoc. You can see a similar concept is what was used with the movie Pacific Rim. Now, let's build a campaign from this idea. So the first thing that we want to talk about is the style of gaming that this would be. And this is going to have a similar feel to kind of old school D&D, right? So this is going to be a little bit lighter on the RP, but there will still be plenty of RP opportunities. But it's going to be more focused on dungeons and exploring and surviving. So this is a great concept for if you have people who tend to favor to be power gamers, those who love to test out different characters and builds, they love combat and dungeon crawls. So you can kind of see here, it's more on the combat side of the D&D, versus just long sessions of just RP. Right. Once again, there will be plenty of RP opportunities, but it's going to be more heavy with the combat, right? So, because it is focused on dungeons, they each have their own theme. And this does present kind of a unique opportunity in that you can actually swap out and rotate or give GMs a break and still continue the campaign, right? Because you have it's almost self-contained. These are individual dungeons, these are individual missions. So maybe they go, they do the rest, they prepare, and they go into this dungeon and they face a ton of undead, right? Or maybe they go and the next dungeon that they enter into, it is a place of scorching heat and lava and, or maybe it's a bitter icy cold. You have then the ability to just change and have different flavors for every dungeon. It's not like a normal ongoing campaign where you have to follow the theme of the landscape. What is the season? What is all this that has happened? You can have bigger jumps and be more free with your creativity. Additionally, the thing is that this is a riskier style of gameplay because with the characters, there's not going to be resurrection. And, these type of spells are going to be taken out. So this kind of puts then the fear of mortality. This puts where you can actually lose your character and stuff. And so you have to be careful with your choices. Do you progress at a slower, easier pace? Do you are then less riskier? Or, just whatever, knowing that when they take these epic moments, it feels more epic because now you have so much more you can lose. On the flip side, due to the high risk that you are now presenting to the players, you should give them an opportunity for high reward. If they defeat a certain boss, maybe they automatically get to unlock a certain feat, or they get this certain spell, right? Or you could give them some cool magical items. this is the type of gameplay that you can be very, liberal and very throwing and creative with your items and rewards. You give them certain skills, feats, spells, whatever, right? You don't have to be as constrained as we're in certain other campaigns. So that's kind of what the idea of what the gameplay would be like for this certain campaign. Moving on, let's go on and talk about the world lore and the setting that we're going to create, right? And so we want to deviate a little bit from, the anime of soul leveling, so that, one, I want somebody knock on my door and give me a lawsuit, and two is that, unlike the show, we need to work with a group of individuals, right? So we want to create to where the players' characters are the stars and that they get to be different, in which they get to progress, whereas others would get their awaken and their stagnant power level, right? So one of the things is that we're going to set this in the world of the year of 2035. So it's in the near future. So you have where it feels familiar. You can have where then, they can have cell phones, they can chat, they can call, they can go do research online and stuff like that. You introduce kind of this element to where it's relatable, versus the typical, fantasy where it is just medieval like, right? So we're introducing modern to it. With this, I would have to say, because we're having it set in a world similar to ours, let's try to keep it professional, and let's not introduce real world events and real world politics, because we're all here to have fun. Now, examples of that you would see is like Independence Day, Sword Art Online, Suzume, so forth, right? Where you have these places that are like the real world. It's very relatable in the stories and stuff, but it's different, where they don't delve into the things of today. So anyway, we have where the gates start popping up all across the world, and this all started about 5-ish years ago. And once this happened, magic was introduced to the world, and there are certain individuals who are able to wield it, to manifest it. And so this is going to create its own unique RP opportunities and dynamic. For the players, the main race should be humans, but I would say you could open it up and say that you can have elves as an option too, that through the events of one of the gates that they adventured, they found elves, and these were a friendly group of people that then, understood the plight of the mere mortals of this realm, us humans, and so you could give that as an option to the players. Obviously, if you want to deviate and add some more, that is your prerogative as a GM, but this is how we are designing it. The other thing is that the reason why the awakened people are so important is kind of going back to that concept that modern weapons seem to be ineffective against the dungeons and the monsters of there. And so you need these people who have the magic within them that are able then to go into these dungeons and defeat these creatures, collect, loot and precious materials, so that way magical items and armors and gear can be crafted to go and help and do these fights and stuff. So let's talk now about building characters, right? So use your favorite system, D&D, Pathfinder, whatever, right? So that way you can help your players. Like we said, magic is kind of a newer thing, so only certain people can wield it, and so that's going to be where your characters and the awakened people have access to this. Divine magic is still available, but it's kind of unique in that, we said resurrection is not available, and that when you go into the portals, they may hear whispers of the divines that they are unknowingly tied to or associated with. With stats, most NPCs and the general public and stuff like that using, the D&D terminology, right, would have basically a base of 10, so a +0 or less because they're just your average people. So therefore, with your characters that get created, because they would have these bonuses, so let's say like they have 14, a 16, or an 18, they already have the magic within them to where they are stronger, they are more than the typical person and stuff. And because they're awakened, right? We recommend using classes that have kind of a magic element to them, sorcerer, wizard, cleric, magus, instead of your typical just melee sort of thing, like a fighter. However, because this is flexible and stuff, if you do have a person who wants to play more of a simple fighter, this is the chance for you, GM. You can still work with this, but use the loot to help reward that and then give them certain benefits and opportunities. Go ahead and create an item and give it to them to where it might give them a bonus to like their DR, or maybe it gives them like a temporary fast healing or stuff like that, to where then it helps buff them, make them stronger also as they progress along. So once again, have fun with doing this. So now we want to talk a little bit about the RP opportunities. So people who have the magic or awakened typically during adolescence, which then kind of presents certain RP opportunities, because then in the background you see how do the governments react to this? Especially with the threats of these dungeons. Do they force these individuals to join the military and get training to learn to wield and go and fight the dungeons? Or do you have more situation where maybe certain governments or whatever your scenario is where that, no, they have a more standoff thing to where you have your free choice, either use it for good or just not, and just stay out of the way. And that perhaps you join a guild, right? So this is going to kind of have that underlying feel to it. Gates should and can have an element of surprise to them. So, as we talked about, there's different variations, but maybe sometimes as they're progressing in there and working the dungeon and stuff like that, whereas they initially thought, oh, hey, this is a challenge rating of 3 and we are level 5s, so this should be easy, but then something triggers and there's an opportunity that, oh wait, no, this is actually challenge rating 6, it changed and stuff like that. Or maybe, oh, it's actually, increasing in difficulty. There's different ways you can play with that to try to add additional, elements of randomness and change and stuff like that. So always keep them on your toes. GMs, I know this is going to be fun, and you can be, once again, creative with it, but don't go too crazy to where if you scale something too much to where you're going to kill the players right off the bat, you have to give them opportunities to either leave or quit or pull out and stuff like that, retreat, right? Don't just create a death trap. That's not going to be fun for anybody unless that is known ahead of time. The other thing is we'll have RP opportunities for what is the life for these individuals between the missions, between they go and do the guild missions and stuff like that. How they do their personal life, how do they deal with guild business, how do they interact with each other, with guild business. That has RP opportunity. If the guild suffers losses, okay, now you need to go find and convince and recruit additional people. If you get too low, are you going to forego doing dungeons, which means forego getting payment and stuff? Do you try to join forces and split the loot with another guild? Do you get absorbed by another guild? There's these RP opportunities there. Then you have the background RP, which you should have, which is the slowly ramping up of the danger throughout this campaign, of the dungeons, right? Where you might hear where, hey, The certain guild, they lost certain members that they typically, are able to handle these dungeons easily. Or maybe, hey, here's this big, powerful guild. They just had a loss. Man, that's really weird. Or, hey, this powerful caster, he went to this dungeon and hasn't come back. We don't know what happened, right? So you start planting these things, and then you have where, oh yeah, here's the underlying thing of like, yeah, the dungeons, the strength and the frequency are slowly increasing, and so that way you keep having that slow looming threat in the background. So that way it encourages, the players to kind of get more power and stuff, so they can prepare for the end. So now the final question is, will this style of RP and this campaign work out? And the answer is yes. I personally have ran a campaign in Battletech that uses this mission to mission play style, where you were part of a merc unit and that had an RP element, but you also had to do every session or 2 sessions where you were sent out to go and do combat. But so there was very combat focused. You had a lot of maps, a lot of combat, but you also had the RP element. As stated at the beginning, this type of campaign is going to be more enjoyed more by certain kinds of players. But we believe that there is enough opportunities for others to find enjoyment in it as well. So tell us what you think of this idea. Is this something that you like? Is this something how would you do differently? So share with us and let us know your thoughts. That's it for today, and thank you for watching.